Hi, my name is Benedict. This is part 2 in this little series on voicing and mixing a piece. While you can just watch this bit, I think you will do much better if you've watched the first half as well. Quick recap is that there's a set of MIDI which I put together, wrote specially for an exercise for students in a certain point and situation. The whole idea is to try to separate people from this idea of there are certain exactitudes, technicalities that we do. Writing and mixing music, obviously it contains technicalities, like driving your car contains a lot of technicalities, like having wheels that go around and an engine that fires. But we don't want to be focusing on those things in that way as we drive. Driving, writing music, mixing music is more of a Zen thing than a following technical exactitudes. And this exercise is about trying to remove people from that. So you will find that my whole approach is somewhat different from that in the traditional YouTube tut. Therefore, a lot longer, because I'm trying to get people in touch with the feeling. Now, this morning I involved myself in a discussion on the thou shalt never give people that use your ears advice. And I really didn't agree with the guy. I got his point because there are times in groups where people ask a question and they're just given I will use your ears, and the person exits. But the advice is, well, supportable at least, because very, very often in those situations, the person hasn't actually shared their song, so you can't hear what the issue is, which means that their answers, or the answers they get, and therefore everything that they're doing and thinking is based on a pile of technicalities, that if you can just collect enough secrets of mixing, that you will be able to do anything and be as good as anybody else. But when you watch a good mix engineer work, it's by flow, it's by feel. A very easy example there is CLA. Watch CLA actually doing stuff, and you're like, oh my God, is this guy drunk, tripping over, whatever. Maybe he is all of the above. But he's in the way he throws himself into things, and he's just like, we'll just add, like 47 dB here, and you know what, it works. Doesn't mean I love everything that he does, because I don't love a lot of the bands that he works with, but he mixes out of feel, not out of you put that knob religiously exactly at that point. That's not how things actually work. So we're going to get in, and we're going to mix this that was voiced. So the piece comes in 4 parts, starts with this very grand, arresting intro. I am going to make a little alteration in the sound here. It becomes quite flowing and melodic, and this is deliberate. I wanted to move people away from the whole dum 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 thing. If you work out how to mix with subtlety, mixing with the boom, boom, boom is far, far easier. If you can't get the subtlety, you can't get the subtlety of creating the illusion of a boom, boom, boom thing. The second part is even more sweepy and swirly and delicate than the first part. It builds up. The third is, well, a bit in between. It bodies up, fills in a lot of what we had before, and then sees us extend in a slightly different direction, because we've got to deal with all those highs. And the fourth part turns into a sort of swirly, almost new age kind of thing. And as much as possible, while automation can be part of this, and I've encouraged automation in quite a few students with their sounds to make them fit from one place to another, I don't want to go too far down that path. I want people to find a balance that works everywhere, because we've got the same sound, so we've got the same characters running the whole way through, and some people go into automate it and just turn it into a completely different thing. I was like, here it's a delicate fairy sound, and then there we've completely rearranged the sound to be some kind of death metal behemoth. And while I'm being a little exaggerated, it's missing the point of working out how to have these voices be consistent, because if each of these voices was a person, the person doesn't change character. It's not like World of Warcraft, where you can simply change character or create a whole new persona to play a certain part. No, here, these are our voices, and they're going to stick. Number one thing that I will always do is create my reverb space. Now, I'd already done this, which is here. So my question will be, do I want to finesse this? This is my own reverb. You can use whatever reverb you like. I like this because it suits what I do. Bearing in mind this is headphones, I hate doing this work in headphones. I feel like that takes all the sounds, makes them bigger, gives them a space. So I'm going to say, yep, cool with that. For the moment, yes, I do still have some mastering stuff in, and I'm going to leave that there as we work, not to be mixing into, but simply because it makes it so much easier for you to hear. If I were doing this without your being here, listening in, observing me, then I would not be running this. I would merely have my limiter set to no boost, and merely to catch anything untoward that came through, and I would have the volume knob for my output, and I've got a whole video on that set to the mixing level. But because this is a screencast, then it's better to do it this way. Now we're going to decide how we attack this. Again, as I said, I'm going to use the 5-stage mixing process, which I encourage people to use at least to start with. And that is, we start with our reverb, which we've done. We've applied that. Sounds like there was already reverb on that. Because I put that part together a long time ago. So we might just go a little carefully there. Yep, that seems to pull that back. I was wondering why the drums seem to be becoming bigger than everything else, and that was because they've already got some reverb on them, because I didn't want students spending all their time on drums. I was just like, there you go, that's what they are, leave them alone. So we've got reverb in, that defines our space. I have whole videos on reverb, especially over at higher hertz. It's a very serious subject. If you don't have a good space that you're working into, you don't have a scene, you don't know what your story is. You don't know whether your characters are Romeo and Juliet or Attila the Hun if you haven't decided what your scene and your place is. Now, you can have many disparate characters if you want, but you need to control them, and that is your reverb. We then look at setting levels. Now, levels to a certain extent are already set, because if you watch the first video, which I encourage you to do, you would see that as I was working, I would be setting levels so that things felt like they worked. If we don't do that, we can find it very hard, and something that's working well can seem like it's really not working well simply because it's too loud. An example can be things like this. It just swallows the piece. And commonly the mistake people make there is with their bass being too loud. So levels, find a point at which everything just basically works, that the parts slot in. As I spoke yesterday several times about strata. All these different voices create strata, layers, from drums and bass on the bottom to squeaky fluty things up top. Everything is in a strata. So these layers get built through finding the right balance of how everything sits together. Now, before you say, oh, but what exactly dB level should they be? Use your ears. When you're saying use your ears, that really means use your brain, not the front logical part of your brain, but use your feelings. How does this feel? As you heard, when I pumped the big strings right up, it changed the feel of the piece. Pump bass up changes the feel of the piece. If I do this, we've changed the feel of the piece straight away. You'll observe how when I changed the reverb balance here, and even just turning it off on the drums, it changes the feel of the piece. And we should always be looking at the big picture. It's not about little technical details and is the knob better at 4.1 or 4.111. It's about the broad step back, feel the piece. And this is the thing that I'm trying to get people to get with this. So levels are probably okay. I then encourage panning. We'll say our drums are going to stay right there in the middle because I believe they've got stereo-ness already. Yes, they do. You can see them flicking left and right. This bass is stereo. I made it stereo. Is it too stereo? I doubt it, because I'm careful when I make things. If I'd made it with everything being as wide as possible because it sounded super in solo, mistake number one, then I think we'd have some issues and probably would be looking to narrow it down. I'm happy with that. This brass I'm going to work on a little bit. We need to think in terms of where do things sit in space. At the moment, it's not mono. You've got stereo everywhere, including from the reverb, but we haven't spaced our speakers out. So if we were in a, even like Arthur with his round table, then Sir Mix-a-Lot's on one side and Sir Jigs-a-Bit is on the other side. Therefore, their parts of the conversation come in from different angles. So we want to decide if we choose somewhere reasonably busy. My general unthinking rule is that more lead or hopeful things should come from my right. More foundational things should come from my left. Watch a classic rock band, you will find that you've got the singer in the middle, the drummer in the middle. You've commonly got your bass player, when we're looking at him, on the left. So that's John Entwistle. And Pete Townsend's over on our right. And we're wondering how much speed his speed took as he jumps around and windmills. There's a reason why that's a pretty standard kind of a layout. It's not the same layout for everybody. Judas Priest, singer in the middle, drummer in the back, and then we've actually got Ian Hill on the right of stage, just over here, the bass player. But we've also got guitarists out on either side as well. Whether there's any kind of rule there, but generally Priest, Tipton, Downing, they kind of trade solos and what have you off against each other. So I don't know whether there's ever really a defined sense of one of them always being more rhythm than the other. So it's a rule that there's just a, well, but there's psychology behind it. So if you're unsure, start with a sense of, okay, I'm going to take my more melodic or hopeful forward-looking elements, put them so that people hear them on the right, and the more foundational parts over on the left. So I'm taking those two strings, putting them there. I'm never a big fan of hard panning. There are opinions either way, they're okay, but if you're like, but you must hard pan, then it means you're not actually feeling things. I don't always love the moved apart that can happen when there's too much hard panning. That doesn't mean that I dislike records with a lot of hard panning, but often they are made by people who, like me, really come from a perspective of what's the big picture here, in which case it's dramatic and it's grand and it works. But where I hear records where thou shalt hard pan and the bits just feel scattered and broken. So I'm not saying thou shalt never hard pan. What I'm simply saying is have a pretty darn good reason based on the scene and story of the song as to what's got panned where. Often I use complementary moves. So one sound will go one way and one will go another. There's no right or wrong in this. You see here I've used small moves rather than going, okay, I'll do my as complete opposites. While you can do that, I'm just not a massive fan, so I will do very tiny moves a lot of the time so that they're still fundamentally centered, but there's just a little weighting to either side, and because there's plenty of stereo happening here already, then our ears and our brains allow this moving out. You end up with a thick sound rather than these sounds that are sort of separated from each other with an empty hole in the middle, especially if you haven't got a good reverb space settled. Okay, I'm happy enough with that because we've got center, a little bit of weighting to your left, and then as the muted solo comes in just to back, then suddenly we've got this expansion of sound. So I'm not unhappy with that. Yeah, we've got most of our things on the left at the moment, but we've got that little muted solo over on the other side, so we've got some backwards and forwards. There's a little bit of backwards and forwards here between our cello and acoustic guitar. So I'm going to say for now, at least, that is okay. I don't like panning in cans, and I always say, and it seems like it was, but I really always want to warn people against the dangers of headphones and the fact that I know I'm not doing my best work, but that's what's necessary to be able to show you this. And now we get into tone. See how quick this really has been. It might take a little while to learn to be quicker like this, but this is a speed at which we should ideally be able to work. People go on about, but I want to do it faster, and then they cut corners, which means they end up doing it slower. My drums I'm going to leave alone for the moment. Actually, no, I changed my mind. At least for the moment. Just rolling a little off the high end. I feel like it can be a little intrusive at times. It's not the drum machine show, even though it's my drum machine. Now, let's look at bass. We'll keep our drums in. What I'm looking to do is to make that feel more full, little bit harder, but not in a kind of a way. Hear how that even there helps pull that forward, make it a little bit more, but without losing that sense of flow that it has. It feels deeper without us wasting a lot of energy here, which won't be heard in a lot of situations. But because a lot of this plays up quite high, want to be able to really emphasize that. Now, some people will be like, but you have to only cut bollocks of. There's a whole video on that kind of stuff on higher hertz that I've done recently. There's also a video which I refer to in that higher hertz video of my own with the charming Baphomet statue on the front, about how these small moves are exactly what EQ is about. And before anyone gets into the phase thing, that's exactly why I use these for the phase shiftiness, because you notice how as we switch that in and out, the sound goes from relatively flat to somehow starting to have a little bit more life. That's the evil of phase shiftiness, which is my very best friend, because I can achieve a lot more with that than without. I think my tone is pretty even overall. I'm really pleased with that sound in headphones. I can even drop its level a tiny bit, because I feel at the moment it's become just a tiny bit intrusive, which is a good thing, because I've given it more punch with very little effort. And you might go, but why haven't you used a compressor? It's like, I don't feel like I need to. Yeah, maybe I could, but there's no should here. And if I don't feel a should, why would I do it? If that idea of like, oh, but you've got to make that punch hard, but you know, it's got to be like, it's got to sound like Metallica's playing, Megadeth's playing Sisters of Mercy, or it won't be good. And it's like, yeah, I'm listening to the piece that I've got. And I don't think that Metallica playing Megadeth, blah, 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 is actually improving what's happening in this piece. And we've got this brass. This brass, I don't feel has quite settled in right. That's better. I'm not going to take a lot of time doing automation here, so I'm looking for one sound that works everywhere. That gives us a lot more majesty here. And still working higher. Okay, I will say that that is all right. And now I want to work out how to create the kind of tone that I want from it. So that is going to be looking at this. I'm going to try my best friend Scream. Obviously with a lot milder settings than that. Okay, we've got a little bit more. It's subtle, but was just a little bit more in there. That's from just some harmonics most likely. My other best buddy, I'm going to put that in there first. So we're going to need to adjust our levels lest it scream like a banshee. probably don't need Scream there because this has a drive circuit on board. And I'll adjust my level here. I don't care whether I've got the same ins and outs. I'm just going, okay, let's adjust so my mix feels about right. I do want this brass to be bigger. So I'm going to use my Echo Nest. That's kind of cool. So this is a pair of echoes that are fed into 3 more echoes. And the timing of the second set of echoes is based on the math of these. What if we put that into the compressor? That sounds more open, but I think I kind of like the before. So it's put a lot of... Maybe it's going to turn out to be too much. But it's also going to depend a lot on other decisions that are made here. Like we've got nice movement there. So what I've worked to achieve here is a sense of embiggening that sound. I have used compression because I want this sound to seem quite a bit punchier, especially in the intro. Remember, it's the majesty of the piece. And the leveling tool has a nice little tube circuit in it. It's a really charming device to use. I've used Echo Nest because I know there's a lot of delays, so it's a fairly quick way for me to get a lot of stuff happening. And that's all being pushed into the Send Reverb. So we get this nice build of sound. And it smooths out all these taps becoming more and more on top of each other. So while I might be using a reverb that's a little lumpy and using my echoes here that are in essence a lumpy reverb, the more that I put 2 lumpy or 3 lumpy reverbs together, then the more taps they have, therefore the smoother they become in a truly unique form. Muted solo. This is the next sound that comes in. I must say I've struggled to get exactly where this wants to be, but this may end up being I'm using a slow attack to let that come in because it's a relatively slow sound, but I'm creating a little bit of a on it, which gives it a bigger feel. Then when we have it come back in here, gives a little bit more punch. All right, happy enough with that. So it was an off-board thing, and it's going to need some echo. I know this little fella has something odd about it that makes the sound seem like it rises in a nice way. So let's try this here. Hear how that's dead? So by putting this delay in, we've moved it in space, so now there's a sense of what's where. If this was a fluterist, then they would be standing in front of the trombonist. So therefore, we've got a sense of depth here. Probably is going to translate fairly well. Okay, feels like it's working all the way through. I don't want to waste a lot of your time here, but just to show the thinking, which is far more important than the exact numbers, because the exact numbers vary from place to place. We've got these big strings. Now, they are already pretty big. Actually, I forgot to EQ this. I'm not sure whether there's a lot of need, but there is a time. Can get a little, then we're just big strings. Tempting to, ooh, aren't they sweet? But is that where they really get body? Let's just use the echo. It's a fairly transparent device. Often like using quite long echoes on strings and pads, because it helps move them back and feel really rich. Especially as we add and it helps smooth over a little bit of the choppy endings. And also, by using our EQ here, we're changing the later emphasis of that string. And despite it sometimes seeming to take the lead, it is a behind the sound. It's not the flutist at the front. There's another string there, taking what's effectively the lead. Rightio. Our acoustic guitar. That comes in here. And this, of course, is a tricky one. We don't want to turn it into an electric guitar. That will be unfortunate. It would be nice to give it a sense of resonance. I have a few resonators, but I'm not sure. Well, one I shouldn't be showing yet. Let's try this. Here we can get rid of the piano-y thing. So we get that nice lutey ring. So this mixes between the original signal and the resonator signal, which is coming through these filter sections. Or we can turn up the filter and balance it against the resonator. So filter section, resonator section. And there is a newer version of this on its way. I want this sound to feel delicate. We've removed a lot of the extra kludginess here already, which is good because we haven't done it with EQ. Now, I've thought a couple of times that I should go for this. I'm not entirely sure why. Does give it a lot more presence. So what this is doing is it's a frequency shifter with a little LFO on it and then a delay. So we've got the frequency shifted signal coming back late. A little bit of modulation, swapping that to a stereo modulation. And that gives that sound presence in the field while still actually keeping it forward. It's helped pull it forward. So that seems like a win there. Cello. Now our cello first arrives here. Not 100% convinced that my cello is quite the way I want it to be. Let's go for a little bit more brightness. Just lacks presence. I guess it's presence. As well as making it just a lot louder. Let's do the whole overdo it so we can just feel it gives it kind of a nice feel, I think. So by doing this, we're making that cello feel louder. We might just lengthen the release. Yep, that flows nicer. Flat to mobile. EQ. I'm actually going to boost the lows on this because I want that feeling of body. We'll make sure that it doesn't fight with the actual bass. Now it gets high. Where is it? Still has a funny fluty quality and I don't fully understand. There is that little ping at the beginning. What is causing this ping? It's not going to be our compressor. Shouldn't be our LFO. It's not that. So it means it's got to be this. And it is. Yeah, the envelope was just too... That gives us a stringier sound. Yeah, it's alright. It will need to have its place in the mix. See, this is not the one that I want to go with. I'm making logical decisions when my feelings are drawing me more to this fella. And that does sound nice. Now the echo offset here initially will offset so that the right goes later, but I'm going to swap this so that the left goes later because sound is slightly shifted that way and I want it to shift that way. So that helps me to shift it that way. I don't have to shift it a very long way. The big strings feel just a tiny bit bright. That's nicer. See how as I've brought in another instrument that's working in that area, they start to not feel as comfortable. They don't sit in strata around each other, as in one above or below the other. So I'm thinking, okay, which is more important when it comes to it? The cello generally has more important lines, and the string is big and strident enough that it gets its point across wherever it is. And the guitar is actually more important here than the string, even though the string is more exciting. But we will work it out as we go. We hear these things. So I can get rid of that, move on to this thin string, which has to be beautiful. It doesn't want to be ugly. This is a quirky sound. So cute, slightly ugly, but very interesting and very charming. Might be a nice way of going with this. Let's say you have watched the new Willow series. It's not that grand, and a lot of the acting is, well, not that grand, but there's a point where we meet Willow's daughter, who's grown up, and she just steals her moments. I've only seen her in one part of an episode, and she absolutely steals her moments there, because she is doing what this thin string is designed to do. She is ugly, but so fascinatingly interesting that she becomes compelling and therefore truly beautiful. There's a line there where actually the pretty girl says to her, "Oh, you're really beautiful." I don't know whether that was an impromptu or not, but it points out the blindingly obvious in the scene. It's a little bit hipster in how obvious it is, but it's true. And that's what this thin string's role is in most of the time it's playing. But we don't want it to be so ugly that we find it hard to take in. So mostly, I think I would probably want to sweeten this. So let's go with this. As I say, it has a sweetening feel to it. While it sounds very nice, it's not serving this sound. It makes it sound nicer and warmer and fatter and richer, but remember, it's a thin string. It's got to cut through. It's got to have small in stature, small in apparent character, yet huge in result. And if we make it just huge, then we're just using a hammer. By lightening the sound, its echo lifts. Hear how much power it has and sits above the big strings. Just glistens up there. I'm happy with that. Happy with that. Piano. I think I'm happy with the sound. Yep. I don't know that we want to subject it to more drive, but we'll try. Let's bring in this. It'd be nice if it didn't automatically output another 37 dB, just ever so on the subtly. Hear how using a very, very short attack just swallows the sound, it crushes it. Whereas if we use a long attack here on the compressor, it helps push that sound forward in the little moment without clouding everything around it. I'm really going to hack off the very bottom here because there is some charm here down below. That's helping control the situation, which I had noticed earlier was that the piano seemed too loud. Now we could automate, but here we've just gone with very mild compression, which isn't affecting the tops much at all. And then as it becomes block chords, then it is more controlled. Probably should give it an echo to put it in place. Let's go with... So it goes from being sort of a little flat and stuck on, which seems clearer, to now being part of the piece. Because we've got that echo, which puts it in space, and that, of course, is picked up by the reverb there as well. And then our final sound, which is our slow swirl pad. We have to watch its low end. While it is here to create a sense of body and fullness, it's not here to rumble the chimney, nor is it here to dominate the highs. You know, if we do this, we go, oh, isn't that lovely? And then wonder why the rest of our mix really is like just not happening. Who's that? That's our cello. Makes me wonder if the cello isn't perhaps meant to be down low. I think maybe it is. That explains the concern that it's prone to being a little fluty. So for the moment, I'll say maybe that's the right thing, that the cello maybe is supposed to be low. This sounds more comfortable. I've already got some delay and reverb there on this sound. Is there perhaps something we can do to add a little bit more something? Let's look at just leveling, not adding level, leveling. Just a little bit, because pads like this can get away a little. Excuse me. Let's just go with echo later. Let's again move that sideways a little. So one of them is a feedback inside, the other is a feedback taking into account the tone and everything else that's happened. To add a lot more body to it. Let's reduce a little bit of the air, and the air is nice. And there was nothing with that sound at all, it was just a thing to hold the rack in place. So I can kind of say to myself, well, look, I think we probably do have a nice mix happening. We can bring those drums back up a little bit. Now the fretless doesn't have a delay on it, which may or may not be a problem. Let's look at putting one on. But a short one. Just listen to just the while the fretless is kind of often the glue that holds the piece together, it doesn't want to be fully out front. It's the spine. You don't see someone's spine before you see their gooey bits. It sits in the back and also inside, even when you see them from behind. So we don't necessarily want our spine out the front. Sounds nice, like the cello. So I'm pulling it down overall, but adding a little bit more air in there. I feel like that's probably how it wants to sound, at least at the beginning of this. Probably about right. The piano. Maybe. Might be better to do it this way. It is better. Okay, I'm going to call that for now. Obviously, I'm in cans and not really sitting down to listen to the whole thing over and over because the piece itself is 16 minutes and 14 seconds long. So you don't want to hear me listen to that over and over. We do need to look at a tail to it. Okay, so timing there is pretty good. I would go to my my master fader here, which should always be sitting at 0, right to this very moment. And then I'm going to insert a little bit of automation. So I can use my start it exactly where I want it to be and drop to 0. I like the natural end that we've got here. Actually, I'm going to go out to there, because inevitably a piece will be followed by another piece and you don't want them to crash into each other too fast. Otherwise there isn't that little cleaning breath between. While people have this idea that there should be no break in the music whatsoever, and there are times where that can be appropriate, even discos, a good DJ knows where to create a break or a lull, otherwise you kill your crowd. There's only so much that you can have people be excited without allowing them to have a break between a breath to change direction. This is probably enough. I've covered most of my steps except for the mastering. So let's have a look at the master. I've prepared the track to be ready to go to mastering. I've already got this bit in. I'm still happy that it's providing value. I might want to look a little bit at compression before. Actually, for a laugh, let's see what happens with this. Once it stops being stupid loud. It's kind of cool on the drums. Drop. Just taking some off the treble, but I don't have a real problem with that. It is doing what we would hope to achieve here. It's gluing. So that's pretty good. Overall EQ. I'm not sure that there really is anything that I need to do here, but again, I'm not hearing the piece overall. It's easy to say that here at 30 we probably want to start disappearing stuff. A little bit of air there, we'll let that sit. I'm tempted to actually leave that there, or maybe I will just do it as a little roll-off like that, just because I want this to feel warm. It wants to feel warm and intimate, and when there's a lot of stuff going on up there, while it sounds nice and sparkly, it's possibly not as charming to listen to in the long term. That being the case, we just want to make sure that our levels overall are kind of where we want them to be. Now, rather than using the front of maybe a little too loud. Yeah. See, I can go louder, but I don't want to because it becomes oppressive. There's still plenty of movement there. So I'm going to say again, that's probably good enough. I will listen to this in speakers and what have you, have a drink of water, come back, have a listen again in speakers. Once I'm comfortable with that, I will run off a version which I will put on the end of the program so you can listen to the whole thing. Again, it's not about whether you like the piece of music, whether the piece of music is perfectly executed or any of that kind of stuff. It's all just about hearing how we've taken notes which we will assume are right because they were written this way, and found a way to make the voices speak that, not only in each incident, but across the whole piece, across the 4 sections, which have slightly different characters. They're like movements in a symphony, only not as good, and then mixed it to make the most of them. Again, not to make the most blaminous sound, but to make the most of the scene and story. So making the most of them is making this story work better. There's no point us making that bass huge and because it's not what the piece about. It's supposed to be kind of windy and flowy. And if we make it just sound like, because that's the only thing that we want to hear, then we're not going in the right place. Once we understand how to do that, then if we are working on a piece that's meant to be boom, 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 then it's much easier to go, okay, how do I create that magical illusion of boom, 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 than it is simply to say, okay, I'll set all my compressors to as hard and fast as possible and then wonder why it sounds strangled and got no magic left to it, got no boom, boom, boom actually coming from it. Of course, if you have any questions, ask them on down below. This is complex material, so you probably will need to go over it a few times. And the reality is, virtually nobody learnt this in the old days on their own. There was always a master-apprentice type situation. So trying to go it alone without actually sitting down and having someone hovering and saying, look, I see where you're trying to go, but, and helping you to get the right mindset and the right understanding, you will tend to just go through years of pain. And I hate seeing that. I really do. Not only for my own pocket, because I could take some money from people, help them to understand and move them along faster, and it's just kind of stupid to see that not happen. But because I hate seeing people who have talent, who have something interesting to say, just get more and more frustrated and either give up or start going in directions that don't suit who and what they really are. You know, remember, Kenny Rogers didn't really want to be a country singer, but guess what? That was the path that was perfect for him when he relaxed into it. When he went back and did some swing stuff, it's like, oh yes, that's nice, they're there. He worked with a top name, I think John Farrar from memory, so nothing wrong with the people that he worked with, it just wasn't really his thing. But being the Kenny Rogers country singer, Cow out of the County sends a shiver down me every single time, because he just found where he fitted. Find where you fit, and this is all about that, finding where you fit. Most importantly, get out there, have fun with it.